decided I'll talk about food forests to start with, and then we've got a few others who will contribute things, and then let's see, whoever else wants to share something, we'll just share whatever feels right to share. So yes, I want to talk about food forests, and in particular community food forests. So here in Ilford, where I'm currently living, we have been looking at some sites to start creating some food forests, and the idea is to find some kind of a park or some kind of a common space where we can create some kind of a food forest, which basically is a way to bring people together. So maybe let's first of all start by looking at, well, what is a food forest, a forest garden? There's many different terms for it, and then from there we can then start to see what do we mean by a community food forest, and what is the advantages of those. So if you imagine going into a forest, so maybe close your eyes and just imagine it's the middle of summer. It's one of the hottest days wherever you are, but you're in a forest. So at home, in town, or as you're walking through the streets in the cities, it's swelteringly hot. It's unbearable. But now you walk into a forest. You walk into the deepest, darkest part of the forest. What do you feel? What's the temperature like in there? Perhaps it's really nice and cool. It's nice and just let someone in. So yeah, it's nice and cool in the forest. Perhaps what do you notice about not just the temperature, but the moisture levels in there? Maybe you start looking around, maybe you start looking at the ground. Maybe what's the first thing you notice on the ground of the forest? Maybe there's leaves. What state are they in? Maybe some of them are just starting to dry, but it's really noticeable that they're leaves, so you maybe start moving some of those out of the way, and then they get less and less discernible. They get into smaller and smaller pieces, and you start moving them out. It becomes harder and harder to tell what is a leaf and what is soil. Once you get to this layer, you dig just a little bit more, and you take a handful of this stuff. What does it smell like? Wow, this is the most amazing, beautiful, rich soil. This is the soil that if we were to grow our vegetables in this kind of soil, wow, they would be loving it. And here it is for free. Completely for free, just in the forest. No one's had to bring it there. No one's watered it. Maybe it's not rained for 2 months. How come this soil is still moist? What's going on? Why does it feel so moist? How come it hasn't rained for months? Where does all this life come from? What's going on here? So you maybe start thinking to yourself, start imagining, here I am on one of the hottest days, but I'm in the middle of the forest, and it's beautifully cool. We've got the most amazing, beautiful, rich soil that is full of life. The reason why it smells so good is because it's full of life. Bacteria, insects, and so on. We've got this most amazing soil that any gardener would die for this kind of soil to have to grow his tomatoes or her carrots or their zucchinis and things. They would love this type of soil. But here it is, completely for free, in a forest. But you look around, well, where's all the annual vegetables growing? How come I don't see carrots and parsnips and tomatoes and things growing in here? It's the most beautiful soil. Where are they? Where's all the food? So you start pondering that for yourself. You kind of look around and maybe you look up at the sky, and well, how much of the sky can you actually see? You can see it through all the leaves, but where's the sun? What's going on with the sun? And what you realise is the sun is being filtered. It's dappling through, so there's this dappled light that comes through. So it's a softened kind of light. In certain places it can be quite strong, but in other places it's really mild. So perhaps the reason why you don't have so many things growing underneath here is because you don't have enough sun. So off you go for a walk, and you go to the edge of the forest. And now all of a sudden at the edge of the forest, where all of a sudden you've got sunlight coming through, what you start to notice is here you've got some places that are in full sun, some places that are in full shade, some places that get morning sun, evening sun, and because of this edge, what you've all of a sudden got is you've got a huge diversity of plants that have just found their own way there. Here, what you have your wild apples, your wild plums, you have your wild roses, you have different types of herbs, you have everything from ground elder to nettles to mints, you've got so many things, burdock and nipplewort and plantago and all these amazing plants just here in abundance at the edge. Why? Why are they here in such abundance? Where did they come from? Why are they thriving? And you question yourself that. So here they are at the edge of this forest. Where are they getting their nutrients from? Who's bringing the nutrients in? Who's doing this work? I haven't bought a bag of compost. I haven't gone and found some horse manure and trudged it across town and then dumped it on here. I haven't been watering this place. Where's all this coming from? And then you start to realise this is how nature works. Nature just creates this richness, this abundance. The trees, these most magnificent, if everyone just studied trees and started to think about what a tree is, what it does, how it behaves, how it finds richness, where it gets its water from, how it shares its water, how it shares its abundance, how even when it, when many people thinking, oh, it's in the process of dying, it's not dying, it's transforming, it's losing its leaves, it's, feeding that to the soil, allowing the soil to take the benefit of whatever twigs and leaves and things and breaking it down and feeding bacteria and insects which churn and eat and poop and eat and poop and eat and poop and create this most magical, beautiful thing we call soil. So, trees do the most magical things for us. Not just give us food, but they give us so many things. They are the stuff of life. If it wasn't for trees and all the things that the trees interact with, we could pretty much safely say there'd be very little life on land. We'd probably still just be in the sea. So you've got these amazingly rich systems that just take care of themselves. And so because the tree is, the tree, as I say, sucks up, it raises the water table wherever you are. If you've got a forest, it will raise the water table. So rather than having to dig wells 100 meters deep or 50 meters deep or whatever, if you've got a forest, you're going to have water more or less at the surface, because the trees will make sure of that. So you don't need to be digging wells. You don't need to be, and all the problems that comes with well water. Digging up the well water and making our deep reservoirs go dry. Effectively, what we're doing is we're changing the very gentle balance between seawater and fresh water. And we can see in many of the islands across the world where they've been relying heavy, where they've chopped down all the trees, where they've been digging deep to get to the well water. This continuous abuse of the land, of water, has led to the complete salination of all their freshwater reserves. So they're killing themselves by doing something so selfish and something so crazy, instead of, allowing nature to do what it does. And that is, that the trees will suck up, will find these water reservoirs, they'll pull them up, they'll utilize them, they'll then allow them to transpire and releasing them back into the system, so that other plants, they give it to other plants, to other animals, to other insects, to then make use of it so that they can grow, and they then enrich the soils around the tree, so that the tree can support more life, and so on and so on and so forth. So trees really are magical. They support all life. They clean our air. They bring the water. They do all these things. And so, as I say, the trees bring life. The trees bring richness. The trees bring nutrients to the system. And but if we plant them so densely together to make this deep dark forest, there's not many other things that can then make use of these nutrients. So instead what we do is we very intelligently space the trees. So we have this diversity, we have lots of spaces between trees, not huge spaces, but we have significant enough spaces, well designed spaces, so that enough sunlight can get through, so we can then have shrubs and smaller trees in between. Then between those and underneath those we can then have different herbs and spices and maybe even some annual vegetables and all kinds of things. So now what we've done is we've created a system where we've got all this biodiversity of life because of the trees, we've got the moisture, we've got this constant nutrient cycle going on, and now we've got all the different herbs and plants and things underneath that can then make use of them. And so underneath each tree we could probably have 10-20 different plants that are all edible, medicinal, or we have some other use for. And none of these will need watering because the tree is managing that part. None of them will need, if we pick the right plants, we will pick plants which either are perennial, meaning they'll come back year after year after year. Anyone who's grown something like rhubarb will know that once you've planted your rhubarb, you just leave it alone and you'll just have rhubarb year after year after year after year. At some point you may think, okay, you know what, let's chop the roots in half, or the tubers, and let's just, the croms is the technical term, let's just chop them in half and I'll plant one over there, then off it goes again. And it's just happily keeps going on again and again and again. So there's many plants like this. I have a cabbage that was given to me 30 years ago. It's actually technically a kale, and this has just given me green leaves all year round for 30 years. Once in a while, every 4 or 5 years, I break off a branch, I stick it in the ground, bang, I've got another plant. And it's really as easy as that. It's just as easy as that. You just keep taking off some woody branches, stick it in the ground, you've got more greens. And even when it's snowing, I'll have a look. I probably even have some photographs of where there's snow all over the ground, and you see the leaves are a little bit sad, a little bit wilted, but then as soon as the snow goes, bang, it starts to grow again. I've got green leaves all year round. I don't have to plant it and seed it and take care of it and then gently pull it out and then move it to a bigger pot and then do this and then do that and then put it out and then, oh, it's too hot, it died. Oh, I forgot to water it, it died. None of that. Perennials, bang, they'll just keep going year after year after year after year after year. So yeah, as I say, there's many plants, many trees, many shrubs, many herbs, many many different plants that even Anyone who's ever grown Jerusalem artichokes, for example, you know, if you want a good root vegetable, Jerusalem artichoke will, you know, the chance of you digging up every single Jerusalem artichoke that has grown in that year is slim, because they're so prolific. So even if you try to hunt every single one down and pull it out, you're not going to be able to do it. So next year, bang, you got a next crop. And the year after that, 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 it just keeps going. Even if you completely, totally neglect the space, it's just going to keep growing. So you've got this continuous yield. So what a forest garden is this very intentional, first of all, it's the understanding of how nature works, how plants take care of themselves, how plants and how a forest manages itself, how it manages the nutrients, how it manages this constant nutrient cycle of, you know, when plants take something out, how does that go back into the system so that it gets broken down so the next generation of plants can keep utilizing it. And so you've got this constant nutrient cycle. Where do we get new nutrients from? You know, if we are taking nutrients out, every time we pull a plant out of the ground and we eat it and we poop it and we take the poop and flush it down the toilet, we've lost nutrients. We've lost nutrients out of the system. So we need some way to bring it back in. Everyone will tell you, you need horse manure. No, you don't need horse manure. You just need to be intelligent. You can work with nature and allow nature to bring these nutrients back in. So birds are an amazing source, you know. Birds will eat all kinds of things from far, far, far away. You need to encourage them into your garden. You give them some of your yield. There you go. There's a huge cherry tree there. I've got 20, 30 kilos of cherries for myself. You can have the rest. Enjoy. Bon appetit. And they'll eat, and when they eat, they'll poop. They eat, they poop, they eat, they poop, and all this other stuff, all the bugs and all the, you know, the different insects that they've eaten, when they crush that down and they poop into my garden, bang, I've got phosphates. I've even got some nitrates. I've got all kinds of different things, micro nutrients from the bird poop. All I had to do was encourage them in and say, here's some food for you, enjoy, have fun. And I can watch the birds, I can talk to the birds, I can listen to them sing, you know, I can just enjoy being there with them. So so this is a forest garden. A forest garden is years of endless change and mutations and evolution and life, and just so many different birds and insects and animals and different foods. You know, different seeds will just come of their own volition and they'll find a niche and they'll just love, you know, and basically what you're doing is you're constantly enriching the soil because you planted the right things in the right place. So this is a forest garden. This is and so what we're going to look at is how do we create a community forest garden, and what's the advantage of a community forest garden. And so actually I'd like to, if anyone would like to speak, I would be interested to hear, what do you think would be the advantages of making such a food growing system, a low maintenance, biodiverse, rich, nutritionally dense forest garden which is beautiful? What do you think the advantages are if we turn this into a community food growing space? Would anyone like to speak into that?
Gives people a chance to get together. It's good for mental health.
Yep.
It's you socializing.
Okay, do you want to elaborate on that? So in terms of bringing people together, how, why, why bring people, how does it bring people together? In what way?
So you're working on something, you've got something of common interest, you're working together on a project. It allows people to come out of the house, you know.
So just bringing people out of the house and getting them to work on something together. When it starts to grow, this satisfaction feeling of, wow, we did this, we achieved this. that's powerful stuff. To be part of a team that achieve things together. So that's one thing. Yeah, brilliant. What else?
So Rakesh, you have a question from somebody asking, what's that kale cabbage? Amazing, sounds amazing, and yes, it did sound amazing. That you don't have to.
Well, I only found out actually 2 years ago the name of this plant, even though I've been growing it for 30 years. I used to call it a cabbage tree because one of them was kind of growing so big that it was growing over my cherry tree, and it was kind of hanging down, and it kind of looked like it was part of the tree. So I called it a cabbage tree for almost 30 years. But now I know it's called Taunton Dean kale. Taunton Dean kale. And it's one of these things that you can now find in seed catalogues as a heritage heritage seed catalogue. So it's available again. But the funny thing is, in 30 years I've never once seen it flower. I've never once seen it go to seed, which is probably why it lasts so long. Great. Yeah, so what else? What else is so bringing people together, helping them to achieve things. You were saying about mental health. In what way? How does it improve mental health?
Well, just so that we know that gardening, being out in the door, greenery, nature is good for mental health.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Just having your fingers in the soil, just the bacteria that's in the soil, there's a lot of proof. I don't actually read the science behind it, I just pick up little bits here and there. But there's something in the soil that triggers various neurotransmitters and things that just, it can take away things like depression. It can, it's really powerful medicine. Wonderful. What else? What else could we do in a forest garden why would a community forest garden be really beneficial?
Shared food.
Sharing the food. So sharing, any community that eats together, really stays together. So to be able to share food, to share, especially in a forest garden, you might not necessarily have the most food stuff that everyone is familiar with. You're probably not going to be growing as many tomatoes and carrots and what have you as compared to, maybe you're growing more things like Agapodium, ground elders, and these strange, weird Taunton Dean kales, and burdock, and Jerusalem artichokes. Maybe things that maybe are on the fringe of what people know as being food. Because let's face it, in the modern society, I think I read somewhere that in certain countries, most people throughout a year probably only eat about 20 to 30 different things throughout the whole year. That's sad. Just think of all the micronutrients that they're completely missing out on because they're just eating the same thing again and again and again. And it's because of this commercialization, because of how certain things don't travel so well, so they can't preserve them so well, and some things are harder to harvest and so on and so forth, and therefore it's harder to find a market for it, and therefore the commercial growers don't grow them anymore, or rather the shops won't sell them, and therefore the growers, there's no point growing them. Whereas if you're doing it at a community level, where you like today, I just went out I was teaching a sociocracy course. As soon as that finished, I just went out, picked some stuff up from the garden, washed it, boom, cooked it, ate it, done, job done. It's like it was out of the ground for no more than 20 minutes before I was starting to eat it. That's fresh. That's full of vitality. I hardly need to eat anything compared to what I was eating if I was buying it from somebody else. Even if I'm buying organic food that someone else has grown in a quite a industrial way, I need to eat a tiny percentage of that amount to get the same nutritional benefits and the same vitality from it. So and if we can be showing people at a community level how to do that. We won't need to eat as much, therefore we won't be so prone to being obese. Most industrialized nations are, obese. We can, wow, there's so many benefits. Sorry, you were going to say something, SM.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when you're learning, when you're doing gardening together, you pick up different skills. Everybody has different types of knowledge, so it grows your confidence. Some of the stuff that when I started growing here, when we did the course, I thought was growing something, and it turned out to be weed. Ruth told me the thing you were growing actually hasn't grown. This is to take it out. So
what weed was it? Don't take the weeds out. They're probably edible. Do you know what it was? Did she tell you?
No, I've actually just took it out yesterday or the day before, and it's still there because I was thinking, can I compost this somehow?
Send me a photo.
If I could
Send me a photo. If I identify
Okay.
it, maybe there's a good use for it. Because what you often find is when a weed comes, especially if it's really abundant around you, it's telling you something. It's there for a reason. It's medicine for you. It's got a purpose. I remember turning up at an orphanage in Romania once, and this land had been abandoned for so long, and and you've got all this trauma and this, and what do you imagine is growing everywhere in their field? What's the number one plant you can think of for nervousness, for trauma, for calming yourself down? Hypericum, St. John's wort, everywhere. It was there for a reason. It was there to calm. Nature is mystically really. It has this way to put the right things in the right places, to give you all the answers you need. All you need to do is ask the right questions. Once you start asking the right questions, nature will give you all the answers. Nature has already put the answer right in front of you, but you didn't see it because you weren't ready for it until you start asking questions. And I can give you 100 examples of stuff like that. So weeds. There's no such thing as a weed. It's anyway, we can cover that another time. Anything else? Yeah, it'd be nice to hear from some others. Pritam, Vikashini, Seamus.
I thought just to carry on from that wonderful thought that nature, takes care of our needs in many ways, not just at the physical level, but at a spiritual level. The scientists are just now figuring out what they call health services and quote-unquote ecosystem services.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an inexplicable link between living next to forests, living next to trees, and benefits to health, which are not explained by any other health reason or psychological reason. And when it comes to original wisdom that native people carry, and we talk about the metaphysical vibrations that occur not only between trees but with humans as well, and all other animals. And it's a part of a balanced communication ecosystem. Our body's constantly receiving these signals when we're out there, and when we're there as community as well. All of these things are happening at a very deep subconscious level, and providing us with the signals that we need to maintain optimal health. And so it's really vital to be there and to be out there. And it's just experiencing that, and it's something which yields results at a very deep level. So I just thought to share that
Great.
There's a very deep communication as well happening, and it's really good at the community level.
Brilliant. So going back to the question again, what else? What other benefits are there to a community forest garden? So there's all the health benefits, the mental and spiritual and physical health benefits. What else?
Well, one of the things that I think is moving on from just sharing, but also it's self-sufficiency as well. So when communities help each other, then they are, as the title of provide things out of season and coming in with all the, the, uh, the cruelty involved in that farming. So there's self-sufficiency, and I think people feel more confident as well then, and bring people together in that way.
Yep, great. So, okay, so at another level, you've also got all the fact that the way that we're growing our food is done in such a way that it hardly requires any work. It doesn't need the constant tilling and destroying of our topsoils. It doesn't require constant pesticides and herbicides. It doesn't require anywhere near as much watering. So just the benefits to nature by creating a space that is really biodiverse rich, and yeah, it is just from that side alone is really immense. So we're creating basically this most amazing habitat, and we look at most of the problems with the environment right now is we look at the number of species that are dying out because of human activity. This can all be reversed if we start converting our gardens into forest gardens. If we start converting our parks, parts of our parks at least, into forest gardens, if we start turning at least a small percentage of our agricultural land back to forest gardens, now all of a sudden we've got habitat where life can just thrive again. And and that in itself, as I say, just having that number of trees again will completely change the water patterns, the rain patterns, so we won't need to rely so much on having to dig up the ground level water, which means we will the reservoirs will have time to fill again and eventually desalinate themselves, so we're not constantly salinating our our water reservoirs, and so on and so forth. There's so many knock-on effects to having a forest garden, and to do this as part of a community forest garden, all of a sudden we're, as people have said, we're bringing so many different people together with so many different backgrounds, all of which have different skills, and we can work with everyone and make really good use of everyone's passion and skills, and everyone can start cross-skilling each other, start helping each other to learn things that that could be really useful in the future. And hopefully what we'll do is we'll inspire each other to start doing the same thing in our personal back gardens. So we can start in the community forest garden, but hopefully that will inspire us. Well, actually, look, we're pruning some of these red currants and black currants. Why don't you take some home, plant it in your garden? Bang! And all of a sudden, people have resources. They don't need to pay for it. They can just rewild their gardens with edible stuff pretty much for free, because they're part of the community forest garden. So whatever excess we have, we share with everyone, and inspire them to enrich their spaces, and maybe then their neighbours say, wow, that's amazing. People who come to my garden, their first reaction typically is, wow, that's a mess. Ooh, that's a mess, because they're used to this kind of really nice, pretty, tidy garden with a big lawn, and then just a little zen kind of pebbled area with one little tree or something, with a few leaves on it, and that's their garden. Now all of a sudden my place is just full of life, and it's full of insects, it's full of different spiders and butterflies, and I count at least 7 or 8 different types of bees every time I walk out there, and everywhere is just food or medicine. I can walk out right now and I can just pick myself a meal. I don't need to go to the shop. So when COVID kicked in and I came back from France, I had to quarantine myself for 2 weeks. Yeah, no problem. everything from my garden. And this is a garden that no one's touched for 7 years. This garden was abandoned for 7 years when my parents passed away. No one touched this garden apart from occasionally, I think maybe 4 or 5 days where we just cleared bramble and a few things like that. But apart from that, no one's done anything. And yet I can walk straight back into that garden 2 weeks and just feed myself with really great, nutritious, vibrant food. Never having to go to the shop. And and to be honest, the only things I actually go and buy in shops nowadays is I must admit I like peanuts, so I'll go and buy some peanuts, and maybe once in a while, like maybe once a month, I'll go and buy a soya yogurt or something. In fact, the whole of July, I very intentionally said, right, I'm not going to even spend 1 penny on food for the whole month. And it was easy. Absolutely easy. No problem. Because it's abundant. And this is a system that, as I say, was designed 10 years ago and was left abandoned for the last 7 years. And it was rich. It's full of life because it's well designed. So this is what we can bring. If we can show people this kind of stuff, if we can show them this kind of thing is possible, and imagine how much extra yield I could have got. Like in the first few years, I think we counted something like 156 different or 160 something different yields from the garden in each year. Right now I think I've got something like 65 unique things that I'm eating from the garden, and this is without doing anything other than actually a few people gave me some tomato seedlings to they'd already started. They said, yeah, we've got too many here, take some. Bang, I put them in. Wow, what a hassle to look after them, half of them, to be honest. I just put them out and I ain't going to water you. You think I'm going to become your slave? No way. If you don't survive, I don't care, just do your thing. So I made some kind of self-watering beds, so to speak, and I planted them in there. And if they survive, they survive.
Only we could say that to our children, Rakesh.
Yeah,
That would be brilliant.
Absolutely. Well, the same goes for anything. It's we can take this analogy in any direction we want. But yeah, so it's just you just kind of, well, for me, a well-designed garden just takes care of itself. So all we need to do is have the intelligence to actually design it in the first place, and all that requires is good observation. So actually I do have coming up, for those who are interested, next Saturday we're going to be doing a little film night where we'll talk again about community forest gardens. We'll show a little film so people can see a forest garden. And then the following month, so for the whole of every Thursday throughout September, I'm going to be running a course on how to design a forest garden. So how is it that you understand different plants, to know what kind of plants to look for, how to know what where to plant them, what size they'll get to, how to space them out, and what kind of things you can plant underneath them. How do you look at the nutrient cycle? How do you calculate where am I going to get my potassium from? Where am I going to get my nitrogen from? So I'll be running it. It's a really simple workshop. It's something like 16 hours in total to totally give you an opportunity to completely revolutionize your garden and your eating systems, and totally change the world. The more forest gardens we have, the quicker this change to a more caring, more abundant world we will have, for many reasons. So, any other questions? Anything else anyone would like to know before we move on?
Yeah, question. Are there any sort of well-known community gardens in the UK that you might want to recommend someone go and visit?
Community gardens?
Community gardens, anything that...
So here in London, now bear in mind that I've hardly spent any time in London for the last 20 years, but 10 years ago, when I was around for a while, I did visit several. I don't really know the state of them now, but as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, they're still thriving. There's I keep forgetting the name. There's the Meadow Orchard project in, it's kind of North London, Crouch End kind of way. There is in Finsbury Park. Wow, I've forgotten the name. Joe Homan is the person who was managing that. Really lovely, really amazing person. Edible Landscapes, perhaps? Maybe it's called Edible Landscapes. I can't remember so well. There used to be one really, I mean, it was managed as a forest garden, but it was in a school. Macmillan School in Hornsey Rise. But that was, you know, we used to be able to go there, I think, is it every Sunday or once a month, I think, on a particular Sunday we were able to go there and just manage the space, and it was really great fun. It was really, I learnt a lot from that. Claire White, really amazing, another really amazing forest garden designer here in London, permaculturalist. I learnt a lot from her and the projects that she did. Really wonderful, amazing stuff.
Also, the Forest Farm Peace Gardens is a little bit different, that you have to be referred to them through your GP or somebody, because they work with.
I'm deprived. I'm sad. I'm sick because I don't have a forest garden. Okay, there you go. There's a prescription. Go to the Forest Farm Peace Garden. Now they do volunteer. Well, they used to do volunteer days.
Yeah.
There, so you can get involved.
They do. I'm a volunteer for them. They've been closed because of COVID, but they've just reopened now, and they're getting back into that. And that's in Redbridge, yeah.
It's near in Hainault. So they've got a kind of forest garden going on there. They're more about the health benefits of people just digging and bring. It's a really wonderful, another really beautiful project. Again, I've hardly been connected with it. In fact, I just spoke to Kate, who is now working there. So probably I will pop over to go and say hello. It's 40 minutes bike ride from where I am, so it's easily on one of my daily routes if I want to.
Rakesh, I was thinking, if we identify a place for this community garden, what's the process? So, for example, say take Forest Farm Peace Gardens. If we approach them and say we'd like to do, how would it then work? Because obviously you've got to take responsibility for that place, right? You've got to, somebody has to be in charge. How does it work? Like, because I'm just thinking from my point of view, I have absolutely I wouldn't know how to manage or run the place.
Okay, so the strategy that I'm taking is all of my projects, I don't want it to be my project. So whenever I kickstart a project, the quicker I can say this is our project, and others say, yeah, this is my project, so each person will say, yeah, this is my project, rather than saying this is Rakesh's project. The quicker I get to that stage, the better. So the way to get there for me is, first of all, I need to skill people up, train them in food forest, hence this course that's coming up in September, every Thursday evening. So 4 Thursday evenings, it's all by donation, so it doesn't matter how much. If you can only afford £5, if you can afford £50, if you can afford 500, it doesn't matter. You just give whatever you can, everything's cool. So whoever wants to be skilled in doing this, I'll train them up, and then we will go together to find more people who are interested and walk through a design process with everybody, with as many people as possible. So we have a collective group of, let's say, 20, 30, maybe even more people who are passionate to make this happen. The implementation is actually then, typically happens over maybe 5 sessions or something, so maybe there's the first year, with all the water management, the first trees and the pathways and things. Then and that typically happens in the winter. Then in the spring you plant some other things underneath. Then the following year you maybe plant a few more things, and then as it starts to mature, most of the work is actually mostly harvesting as opposed to planting. And so you might want to do a little bit of management here and there. And as anyone who's watched any documentary on forest gardening, or spoken to anyone who's got a well-designed forest garden, they'll tell you, maximum you might need 5 or 10 days in a year to manage the space. So actually the amount of time it takes to take care of it is actually negligible. It's absolutely nothing. And as I showed here with this place, I left it for 7 years and it's still abundant. It's still full of life. It's still producing a huge amount. So yeah, so we get people together, we train them to design it. They then go out to engage the rest of the community to walk through a design process, and without me necessarily being the only person with that skill, we collectively can do that. And then we start making it happen. We start implementing it, and then the management of it is just you just need a couple of people, 4 or 5 days a year here or there, just to do a little bit. It's mostly just harvesting, it's mostly just collecting fruit. And then the toughest decisions is, right, what do we do with all these cherries this year? What do we do with all these raspberries? What do we do with the apples? What do we do with all these green vegetables? And so now all of a sudden you can start thinking about preservation. So now we can skill each other in how to preserve stuff, so that we've got this stuff for later on. Like right now, I've got my probably 4th or 5th batch of radish pods that I'm harvesting, and I'm just pickling them. So I've got them for, I can be eating them in December, which, radish pods in December, you're crazy. Why not? So yeah, it just takes some good management. It just takes finding a good team of people. So if you do, and I can also come, maybe if you go there next time to the Forest Farm Peace Garden, I can come as well, and we can have a chat and see if they want to be part of this project and
that'd be
start
interesting.
something. That'd be cool. Very good. I tried working there in the past, but it never really happened, mainly because I was hardly ever in the country.
I know they've got some space because someone else was doing something there and they had to kind of stop. So I know that someone pointed out a plot of land towards the end,
Cool.
where they said, nobody's doing anything here at the moment. So yeah, it just, don't know.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Wonderful. I think I've spoken for way too long already. So I think I'm going to